Good morning, guys. Coach Theo here on Common Sense. Just back up from a morning swim, and I'm actually going to be talking a little bit more about that in a second. But today we're talking about my current cutting regimen, where I'm not doing any prolonged fasting, which would be my typical means. My typical routine for cutting weight would be incorporating 60-hour fasts, mostly on a weekly or every other weekly basis, and sprinkle in a longer fast at some point. But now I'll be doing it differently, using a daily deficit, intermittent fasting only. So I can talk about why first. Like I have done a few fasts spread out, not as a structured routine like I would normally do it, that I've already kind of kick-started the fat loss like that. But now I have around a month left here in Greece, and I just don't want to be fasting during that time. I want to be training more. I want to be able to be more social, which includes training. I have people to train with here, but not have to turn down any social events or just be participating fasted or anything like that. I just don't want to be doing any more fast. I might at the very tail end, when I go home, I might use the traveling day as part of a fast I do at the end or something. But this is why. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I think about when I do this and exactly what the routine looks like. And many things I'm going to tell you here are things I think you should be aware of or do at most times, but I'll be talking about it specifically as it relates to cutting on a daily deficit. So my regimen, what it looks like, is 3 meals per day, around 2,500 calories, which for me should be like a 500 to 700 calorie deficit. I focus on high protein. I don't have my macros of there, but typically if it's 2,500 calories, it will be around 180 grams of protein, 90 grams of fat, 230, 240 grams of carbs, something like that. So what I think about with my macros is, of course, the protein could be higher technically, but I want to be able to have more carbs to just fuel workouts. So it's not really, it's a good strategy to stay satiated, to eat higher protein. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. It's also the one that takes the most energy to digest. So, calories from protein end up being a little less effectively, as you will use more energy just digesting it. But for someone like myself, that I don't really have to, I just have to eat enough to support muscle prevention or even gains, if I can make some kind of gains in a deficit. So, what you want then is around a gram per pound of body weight or 2 grams per kilo body weight. For me, 180 grams should be just about 2 grams per kilo of body weight. Don't want to keep without making the fat super low or anything, because many nutritious foods, the many fatty foods are high on micronutrients as well. So I'm not trying to go on low fat, but I'm also mindful about fat, not using as little extra fat when I'm cooking as possible. Let the fat come naturally from, for instance, 8 eggs, and then I want as many carbs as I can have in a deficit to just fuel my workouts the best I can. So I eat 3 meals. First meal is usually 6 eggs, some honey, and a carrot. Then second meal is typically, that's right, I'm focusing more on fruit right now. I could be eating potatoes too, because it's just more satiating than rice. Then I would typically eat a lot of white rice when I'm maintaining or bulking. Potatoes is a good option, but I'm also a little bit experimental. I usually have some piece of fruit with a meal, but now I'm trying to get all my carbs from honey and fruits. So my second meal would be something like 300 grams of beef with some fruits. I had strawberries and a pear and a carrot last time. And last meal will be my typical thing I've done for a long time, improved upon during these years. But I mix Greek yogurt and honey as the base, and then I take kefir when I want. I would use more Greek yogurt if I'm bulking because it's fattier. Now I just use it for the base, and I use kefir that's leaner. I have protein powder in there, and I have a bunch of berries in there. And yeah, I will eat a carrot always. Carrot per meal for a belly of steel, digestion-wise, that is. And I will eat my liver with this too. So what I like to think about, you should always, this is what I mean with this goes always really, but especially when you're cutting, you have to use your calorie budget really well. What do I mean by that? Well, the less food you eat, the more likely it is that you end up with some kind of micronutrient deficiency, right? Like if you're eating a bunch of food, maybe you'll be eating too much and you put on fat you don't want, but at least as long as you're eating the good stuff, you're addressing micronutrient needs more easily. So in a deficit, it's really important. That's why I will be eating liver all year round, but especially now when I'm cutting, I've been even more like rigid. I need to, because, as you all know, liver is nature's multivitamin. And then just little strategy things, like the fruit. I find it more satiating with the fiber in the fruit. Something like my last meal there, it's quite tasty, but it's not super satiating, so I will have like a big ass pear at the end of the meal. Just because it helps satiety more. But okay, that's kind of what my routine looks like right now. But some more stuff in there. So what I like to do when you're cutting daily is to take what would be, you change your food intake so that you would end up in a calorie deficit, even if this was the only thing you change. You don't change anything about how you go life other than that. And then you make conscious effort to do more activity. And look, I would always encourage people to get more steps in. Like the more steps, the better, basically, for just overall health and that. But especially when cutting, you want to find, if you like doing cardio, if you like going running or whatever you like doing, fine, But I like to think of it more like, how do I change just my behavior throughout the entire day so it supports my goal, and just moving more. Burning fat, it doesn't have to be intense. Building muscle needs to be intense exercise. But burning fat, it just has to be movement, really. But what I don't like, mostly when people rely on activity, it's so much easier to make the adjustment by lowering food to end up in a deficit is so much easier than trying to catch up with activity. So I'm saying this especially as some people would be like, no, but I moved more today. Look, I had more steps here. I burned this amount of extra calories, so I can actually eat more. That's what's gonna make you stagnant, a lot of people. You should see it as you create a deficit with the food, and then it's a bonus from your movement. What you have to understand too is, all these things, your little Apple Watch or whatever you have, or your cardio machine you're using, you have to realize they're always too generous also with the number they give you. It's in your, bigger number, bigger dopamine high to you, and you like the product and you want it, right? But it's both this, but also what you don't realize is the number that shows up. You go on some treadmill, it says you burnt 500 calories. Probably that's not as much as you were actually burning, but what you have to realize too is this shows what you've been burning during this entire time you spent on the machine. Some of that energy you would be burning just by existing, So if you think you can eat 500 calories extra because you did 500 calories of cardio, probably you'd have to do twice that amount. So don't even think about that. Start with the food. I create the deficit with the food, and whatever else I can sprinkle in on top activity, that's bonus. Because now, when you just go, this is exactly what I do, right? And that means it's going to be easy for me to get in enough protein. That's the most important thing of all the macros, always pretty much. But now, getting in high enough protein when cutting, because I have a lower calorie budget, right? Now, I can end up in a bigger deficit without restricting food further. I start with the food, but then so what I will do is just recording a video like this, of course. I'm walking a little bit, but I will do this. I've started swimming. That's what I said I was going to come back to, swimming. I've been living here, I've been soaking in the sea a lot, but long story short, I was afraid of water as a kid, so I learned to even be with my head underwater very late, and I learned to swim late, so I've been able to swim. It's just not been a go-to for me. But now I've been doing, like, I don't even do long swims, you know. It's not like, oh, now I do this big swimming session. I go down like every morning, 15 minutes, in the middle of the day, 15 minutes, sometimes in the night, another 15 minutes, you know. I would just go on little walks, like I had a half an hour between 2 client calls. I just go out, ground my feet, catch the sun, burn a little bit of fat, you know. But it could be anything, you know. If you have chores to do around the house, do them. It's great. Like, I'm cutting, great. The more I move, the better. When you can, not take the car or the bus or the subway or whatever, walk instead, do that, you know. This is really all there is to it. Pick good foods that satiate you and address your micronutrient needs well. Eat enough protein. Don't be careful about the fat without like overly restricting it. Create the deficit with the food intake first, then add in activity. All right. That's basically it. So I guess I'm telling you about my routine, but also little strategy tips for doing it in general. I could go on. I have other things in my mind, but we'll end this video here. Please like and comment what you think. What do you think? You can send me DM. I'm having a special offering on coaching during the summer, because I'm going to kind of reboot my different services after the summer. So you can reach out on Instagram or email me. It's all in the description. I'll tell you about it. Please subscribe for more content about fitness, fasting, losing weight, building muscle, self-improvement, stoicism, mental health, philosophy, mindset. It's a mindset, guys. Start with the food, then you add bonus on top of that. All right, peace.